Welcome to the DFS Build MLB edition. I'm Kevin Roberts, joined with Taylor Smith. There's an NBA video out on the DFS Build channel too, if you want to catch that for today's two-game slate. But right now we're all about MLB. I believe this is an 11-game slate. Taylor, correct me if I'm wrong. But
10.
Yep, so 10. Okay, so lots of games to go with here. Let's move this back up here. By the way, we are sponsored by DFS Hero, cool lineup optimizer you can use to try to get a takedown. You can also get a 15% discount off of the first-time sign up for them if you hit the link in the description below this video. Also, please, if this video does help you in any way, give it a like, and then also subscribe to our channel so you can get alerted to future videos just like this. All right, Taylor, let's just dive into it. There's a lot to discuss. First game of the night, we got Rays at Yankee Stadium against the Yankees. Actually, let me pull up where I have it. Yeah, this is 8.5 run total game. Major park upgrade for the Rays. Obviously, the Yankees are mashers. They are facing a southpaw, which worth noting that Alexander, the guy they're facing, small sample size, but he did show reverse splits. I'm not really that worried about that. I really like Yankees in this matchup. And then Rays get Clark Schmidt. His K rate has spiked a bit. But they obviously get a park upgrade. So how are you feeling about these pitchers, and do you like either of these teams for stacking purposes?
Let's see. Yankees look decent. Not really getting to a lot of them, though. I think there are a bunch of other offenses to pay up for tonight. They're also pricey, like Soto and Judge are both over 6K. It's kind of tough to get there. Alexander's not a total gas can either. I am getting to Schmidt a bit, around 12%, just because he's cheap. Pretty good strikeout guy. Kind of a high walk rate, which is a little alarming, but cheap enough to where I think you can take shots on him. As far as Tampa, I'm not really getting to anything. Alexander, not a good spot. And the offense, just not very good. So, yeah, pretty much all Yankees for me on that one.
Yeah, I'm in agreement. Don't really have much interest in the pitching for this game. I'm okay with the Rays just because they get a park upgrade, but it's Yankees for me here. I do like them quite a bit. They are a top 5 stack for me on the slate. Next up, we got Athletics visiting Tristan McKenzie and the Guardians. Obviously, McKenzie in a vacuum looks good because the Athletics are not very scary, and they also come in with a 26% K rate. I don't think he's really fully healthy. He's got like an elbow thing, and he's walking a lot of guys. So those are two reasons for maybe not using Tristan McKenzie, beyond there being other good players. But I do want to hear your thoughts on whether or not you like McKenzie against Oakland, whether or not you might actually stack the A's on this slate, and then how you feel about the Guardians.
Yeah, I'm not going to have any McKenzie. He's pitching with a torn ligament in his elbow, which seems ill-advised. Oakland and Cleveland are two of my higher-owned stacks tonight, just because they're cheap and the ballpark's good, especially for Oakland. This is a big park boost for them. McKenzie's just not right, and the Oakland A's are cheap. So like Seth Brown, Toro, they're both around 3K. Butler's around 2K. JJ Bleday around 3K. The only guy you're paying up for is really Geloff, who's legitimately good. So happy to get to them, even though it's Oakland. They still have a low total, but I think it's a little too low. Cleveland looks fine too. Jose Ramirez as the lone spend up for them. I guess Naylor's a little priced up too, but I'm not really scared off the matchup. Joe Boyle is a high walk guy too. So I just think there are multiple routes to success for this team. And yeah, I don't generally love getting to Cleveland, but tonight looks like I will be.
Yeah, no, I never like playing Cleveland. I actually do like the Athletics quite a bit based off of all the reasons you just said, but also, I mean, they just look good here. Park upgrade, McKenzie last year. Well, actually, last year's sample size is really small, so I'm going to ignore that. But I think either side of the plate is pretty viable here in this matchup, especially like you said, he is struggling. So I mean, Brent Rooker, Geloff, Bleday, everybody here looks pretty good. It just depends on who you end up prioritizing, but I do like the Athletics here. Guardians are totally fine, but not necessarily priority for me right now. Next game, Rangers and Braves. Chris Sale takes on the Rangers. And Andrew Heaney will battle the Braves. I have zero interest in Heaney. The Braves obviously look good like always. I'd go righties first, but a full stack is in play. And then I don't really want Chris Sale here, but I don't think he's terrible. The Rangers do have, well, they don't really strike out that much. So I don't know. I don't really like Sale here, but I don't necessarily want to go to my way to play Texas bats. How are you feeling about this game?
Yeah, I don't really want to do that either. I think Sale, his ownership looks a little high. I don't think it'll actually be that high. I think people will be kind of scared off of the matchup. I think playing him as a lower owned pivot from like Freddie Peralta, for example, is fine. Atlanta, like you said, righty power Gansini has been a thing forever. So Cunha, Duvall, Ozuna, Arcia is going to be higher in the lineup with Albies out. Austin Riley, of course. David Fletcher's cheap. Travis d'Arnaud's cheap. There's just a lot to like. I think they would be quite chalky if this wasn't a Coors slate, but the salaries should help keep the ownership relatively in check. They're still going to be somewhat popular, but I'm not really concerned about ownership on this slate. It's a big slate, a lot of good offenses. So I'll probably just be playing them regardless of ownership.
There wasn't a gotcha moment by pulling the stack percentages up, but worth noting they are the fourth highest owned stack of the slate. The Braves for good reason. I'm with you on like if Sale's ownership dips. I mean, he's viable. I don't really want to play a pitcher against the Rangers though. They're not really an offense I like to attack. But he's been pretty good this year, so it seems like he's kind of righted the ship, so to speak. So he's fine. I actually don't mind eating the pitching chalk at all. I like Freddie Peralta a lot. I'm totally fine with Joe Ryan. We'll get to these guys in a little bit, but I'm fine with that. So I don't know if I need to deviate there, and then I'll just get different with my bats. But I'm with you across the board here. All right, next up we got the Orioles and the Royals. I think this has the second highest total of the night.
Sounds right to me.
Yeah, it's tied for it with 9.5. So Baltimore projects as the highest owned stack of the slate, I believe. Yeah, they're right there with the Mariners. So they look really good going up against Alec Marsh. So he gives up just shit tons of power. So yeah, the Orioles look really, really good here. KC on the other side, I think, is totally viable just because Dean Kramer has major issues against lefty power. So yeah, both offenses look pretty good. I'd favor the Orioles here, but they are chalky. So maybe for tournaments, you might want to pivot the other way. How are you feeling?
Yeah, I'm going to be there. They're my highest owned stack, and I think I'll just be there. Like I said, I'm not super concerned about hitting ownership tonight. I think the pitching is going to be a bit more condensed, so getting different with pitching I think is okay. It's just a sea of lefties against Marsh, who struggles to strike him out. Henderson, Rutschman, Santander, Mullins, O'Hearn, Holiday, and Kowser, all left-handed, all projected to be in the lineup. It just looks fantastic. They're not too priced up either. Guys like O'Hearn and Holiday, Mullins even under 4K. Like there's a lot of salary relief you can get here. And no one is more expensive than Henderson at 5.4. So I see why they're owned, but I will also be owning them.
Yeah, sometimes you just have to embrace that chalk. And with baseball, like you said, especially with stacking and 9 bodies per team, it's very easy to spread that out. And what seems like chalky really doesn't make that much of a difference. How about the Royals? You like them at all today?
I see the merit to getting to them, but I do think Kramer is better than Marsh, for example. I don't think he's a guy that I'm super inclined to try to pick on. Casey is also not as cheap as they have been over the last couple of years. They're actually doing quite well. My voice was weird there for a second. Yeah, I think they're okay, but I'm not getting to much of them. They're not really projecting to be that chalky from what I'm seeing, but much more likely to be on the Baltimore side.
Yeah, I agree. I do think KC is an interesting stack that's just inherently just going to be overlooked here based on the slate, especially since the team they're facing is like the chalkiest offense. But like you said, Kramer is not like necessarily a gas can. He can be gotten to, but I agree. All right, so we got the chalkiest pitcher of the entire slate, Joe Ryan, facing the Tigers at home. Obviously, he looks really good in a vacuum against Detroit. Detroit does not have a very dynamic or powerful offense, and they whiff at 22% rate collectively against righties. I do worry a little bit that he's like 41% owned. Like that's pretty gross. Eating mega chalk Joe Ryan doesn't feel amazing, but at the same time, the Tigers don't really feel stackable here. So I think Joe Ryan just is a good play that I'm just going to eat and then move on. The one I would actually consider going against though is Jack Flaherty, who just we know historically is not a very easy guy to trust. He actually is carrying some ownership, 22% at the moment. He does project well. The Twins do strike out a shit ton, 26% against righties, but they also have a lot of lefties and a lot of power. And Jack Flaherty's major issue is lefty power. So that's where I stand. I do like the Twins as a sprinkling of a leverage stack on Flaherty ownership, but I will be eating the Joe Ryan chalk and mostly ignoring the bats in this game.
Yeah, that's what I'll be doing. Ryan's just cheap, like 8-9. I don't know why he came down from where he was before after dominating the same team 5 days ago. 8,900 just kind of silly. He should probably be 95 to 10K. So fine with the underpay. I have a lot of him. I'll probably be right in line with the field. I might be over on Flaherty just because he's cheap and there are a lot of bats to pay for on this slate. He's 7-7. Like you said, Minnesota, super high strikeout lineup, 26% in the projected lineup. Yeah, they do have power, but I just think for the dollar and for the strikeout upside, he's worth a shot tonight. And for the bats, I'm not really getting much at all for either team.
Okay. Any concern at all with Ryan facing the same offense 2 games in a row?
That's generally good for the bats, of course. I'm not expecting him to strike out 12 again, but he doesn't really have to pay off 8-9. So it's just a really good spot for a good pitcher. So if it goes wrong, it goes wrong. But I'm not going to be too concerned with that, honestly.
That's totally fair. All right, moving on. We have the Brewers and the Cardinals in a divisional rivalry clash. Let me check. Let me go back here. All right, so we have Freddie Peralta looking really, really good against the Cardinals. He gets a park upgrade, and the Cardinals strike out enough to make this matchup look pretty inviting. I like him quite a bit. On the other side, you have Kyle Gibson, who himself does not look great, but the Brewers strike out a lot. So I don't really want to use Kyle Gibson, but there's merit to it. On the other side, he's pretty gettable, so a Brewer stack is in play on this slate. But overall, I'm probably just going Peralta and nothing else from this game. How about you?
Probably just both pitchers. Like you said, the Brewers strike out quite a bit. No Yelich. Replacing him with Blake Perkins, so that's an upgrade for strikeouts. Gibson, not a great source of that, but he does have a decent leash if he gets through easy innings. He's like another Miles Michaelis type where I could just see him, faking it till he makes it to the 5th or 6th inning here. So for 7-3, I don't mind taking shots on that. I will have more Flaherty in that range because I think there's more of a ceiling there, but Gibson's okay. Peralta, he's coming in around 33% projected ownership from what I see. I have him at about 24%. Like, he's a great play. He's a great pitcher. The matchup's fine. It's not a great one. It's not a great strikeout lineup he's facing or anything like that, but he's up there with Ryan as the top pitcher on the slate. I will likely be a bit under the field, but I'll still be getting to him quite a bit.
Yep, in agreement. All right, we got
the only reason I would be under on him is because there are a lot of other good plays on this slate. Like, it's a pretty deep pitching slate. More inclined to just go over on the underpriced Ryan as opposed to the appropriately priced Peralta.
Yeah, that's fair. All right, we do have a Coors game on this slate. Seattle Mariners visiting the Rockies in Colorado. So this game does not have good pitching at all either. So no real reason to not have interest in the Coors game, except for I think it's a little chilly. I think it's 40 degrees there. So that could be one reason to maybe go a little underweight. Like I said before, the Mariners are coming in as the second chalkiest stack. Always worth noting when Colorado is in Coors and not being owned. So I actually think the Rockies are in a pretty interesting leverage play here, just because it seems like they're going to be completely overlooked. But obviously the Mariners also project very, very well in this game. So are you going to be mega overweight on the Mariners? And do you like the Rockies at all?
I'm not going to be mega overweight on the Mariners. I will be around, looks like 20% on them. I usually don't go around over 30 on any single team stack on a slate. So, yeah, they look great, obviously. Dakota Hudson's a ground ball guy, not a strikeout guy. The lineup has a lot of fly ball hitters in it, which is what you want to see against a ground baller. So Raleigh Rodriguez, he's a ground ball hitter, but it's whatever. It's Julio Rodriguez. Crawford's not overpriced. Haniger's reasonably priced. Josh Rojas, Jonathan Clase at 2.9 is going to be popular as a punt. Yeah, I don't see much reason not to get to them. As for the Rockies, the issue with them is the prices. Like, they're not a good offense and they're not cheap. So I get that it's Coors, but it's kind of hard to justify paying up for them for me on this slate. I'm not going to really get to much of them, it looks like, tonight.
Yeah, that all makes sense. I think the only reason why I am even mentioning the Rockies is just because it looks like they're not going to be very owned and they're in Coors. I think anytime that happens, it's like if you are on an NBA slate and Jokic projects well, but the matchup isn't good and he's like 2% owned. Like, you got to at least consider Jokic. So that's where I'm at with the Rockies. Not a priority stack necessarily, but obviously very much in play. All right, we have the Blue Jays visiting Matt Waldron and the Padres. And then we got Yariel Rodriguez on the other side for Toronto facing the Padres offense. I think Toronto looks pretty good here against Matt Waldron. The lefty bat stand out the most. He's had issues there. He's kind of had issues with everything, though. So, yeah, I like Blue Jays a little bit. The park obviously is not ideal, so they're not ranking as like a top 5 stack for me, but they're pretty close. No real interest in the pitchers, and I don't ever like to say completely no to the Padres, but not really interested in San Diego either. How about you?
Yeah, I don't really want to play the Blue Jays, but I kind of am getting there a little bit. Not one of my higher owned stacks, but top 10 maybe. It's kind of a price thing. Like, they're pretty cheap besides Bichette and Vlad Jr. Everyone's under 5K. There are a couple guys in the 3K range, including Kiermaier at only 2K. So I get it. Waldron's not a very overpowering guy. I don't mind that. It is a park downgrade for them, though. Rodriguez, the pitcher, only being 5K, I think is intriguing. Like, he's not supposed to be terrible. He's not a total nobody. So if you want to punt that and pay up for bats, I think Rodriguez is probably the way to go with that. As for San Diego, not getting to Waldron, I have Tatis kind of as a one-off a lot, but nobody else really popping for me on the San Diego side.
Yep, I'm with you. All right, moving on. We got Mets and Dodgers in LA. Sean Manaea. Sean Manaea taking on the Dodgers. That's a big F no for me. Dodgers obviously look good as usual. He's actually been pretty good this year, but and he has a decent history, but nope. don't want to do that really. Then you have Yoshinobu Yamamoto. Yamamoto? How do you say his name?
Yamamoto.
I got it. I just stumbled over it. Okay. He looks fine. The Mets obviously have some power, but I think he's a decent play here. The problem here would probably be price, and the matchup isn't the best. Mostly for me, it's just Dodgers here and Dodgers offense. I'm not really looking at the arms that much, and I don't want the Mets against Yamamoto. How about you?
Yeah, Yamamoto is kind of a Chris Sale type, just priced up and a pivot away from Peralta or Ryan. I don't think he's bad. I have him around 10%, so I will be getting there a bit. Obviously, righties stand out against Manaea, Mookie Betts, Will Smith, Andy Pages, Kike Hernandez, maybe. Chris Taylor was in the lineup, but not dying to do that. The lefties are going to go overlooked. Ohtani, Freeman, Muncy, of course. So, yeah, they look fantastic as they usually do. It is not an elite matchup, but they should be reasonably low owned as a result.
Yeah, low-owned Dodgers is always pretty interesting. Let's check where they are ranking in the stack here. They are coming down about the 10 range here. So, again, Dodgers overlooked. That is pretty appealing. All right, last game of the night is at Oracle Park. We got the Diamondbacks visiting the Giants. Jordan Montgomery towing the rubber for Arizona. And on the other side is Blake Snell. We never can really trust Blake Snell's pitch count. And, obviously, he's got a history with walks. So, I mean, I think the Diamondbacks, just because their power and because he can have issues with walks, they are kind of appealing, but the park restricts both of these lineups. So I'm not super into anything here at all. How about you?
Yeah, it's Montgomery's first start, so he'll probably be limited, and he's not cheap either. Not doing that. Snell's been limited, also been bad. We've seen that he has like slate breaking upside on occasion, so He's another of the Yamamoto Chris Sale types where I think he can play him. I don't think he's going to be owned at all. The match against him is tough for strikeouts as well. But, like I said, he can put up 40. I think he's going to be 5% owned. I think he's worth targeting, especially if you're building an otherwise chalky lineup, like if you have the Mariners and Ryan or something. Going to Snell instead of Peralta makes sense to me.
Yeah, I think the only problem is the D-backs do not strike out. And
they don't strike out at all. Like, it's a bad matchup, but it's just,
right.
Blake Snell. You hope that he...
I hear you, but it's 9.3K Blake Snell against a good offense that doesn't strike out, and he hasn't made it past 4 innings yet in either of his starts. So, I don't know. I hear that...
I do think he can get up to, like, 90. Like, he's been around 80. I think in the last start he was around 80. So it's just a hopeful thing. Like, I'm not building around him or anything, but if it's just like a total dart throw, I think he's always full.
Like, 13%. I mean, I agree with the GPP mentality. That is
13%. I would take the under. I don't think anyone's going to really want to play him tonight.
No, I would agree with that. Yeah, I think let me refresh this actually just to see if there's an updated look at where we might be at with the ownership. Particularly because we're going to go into our final segment here. 13. Okay. All right. So as we wrap up here, let's look at that high ownership for specifically the arms. I know we are both in on Joe Ryan. I mean, I'm probably just locking him in, and then I just have to figure out what I want to do at SP2. But outside of Joe Ryan, as far as the chalky arms go, who's the first guy that you are going to build around? And who's a chalky arm that you are gladly fading?
I don't think I'd be fading any of it. I think it's pretty good ownership on everybody. As far as a build around, I guess I would say Flaherty, which feels really gross and awful, but he's cheap. Like I said, matchup Minnesota is really good. So fine with him. I will have more Ryan, Peralta, and probably Sale. For the sake of being different, I'll say Flaherty.
Yeah, I think I'm going to build around Ryan and Peralta and not like force my way to like Coors or something. Just because my first couple of cracks at it, I'm seeing that there's enough value to do that. And one way I might do that is by targeting Jack Flaherty with some Twins because they're cheap and he has issues with lefty power. I like the Twins a little bit today, so I think as like a secondary stack, and then they help me go get like to the Orioles or, maybe a little bit of Coors or the Yankees. So I think that's doable. Let's see. As far as the stacks go, one last look at stack percentage. Obviously, we like Baltimore, Seattle, Atlanta. And then we did mention Toronto. Their ranking is the third highest owned stack. If they're going to be like super owned, maybe I'd get a little bit off of Toronto. But as far as the high-owned stacks go, which one do you feel the best about going into tonight?
It's Baltimore, even though that's the easy answer. I think the ownership's justified. I think the matchup's a little bit better than the one the Mariners get against Hudson. Just, I don't know, both look great, but I'd side slightly with the Orioles.
All right, and real quick before we end this thing, at the bottom half, as far as stack percentage ownership goes, what low-owned stack do you like the most here?
It is going to be Oakland against the hobbled version of McKenzie in that good ballpark. Easily the best stack among that group for me.
Yeah, I agree that. I agree that with you on Oakland as far as like I like them a lot, so I'm with you there. And right under Oakland, my Twins. I'm not a Minnesota fan, but I do think they're a pretty fun play today against a kind of chalky Flaherty. And then, just a tiny sprinkling of Detroit Tigers just because fucking 41% Joe Ryan. In the lineups you don't play Joe Ryan, get yourself a little bit of Tiger exposure just for fun, right? Because the slate can go baseball, man. The slate can go sideways in a hurry.
That is true. That's true.
I know. And it probably will. It will. Almost every single time one of the top 5 owned pitchers gets their ass kicked. It's just how it goes. So keep that in mind. All right, so that does it for us. Hopefully we helped you out and assisted your process. If we did, please give this video a like and consider subscribing to our channel. Thanks for tuning in and good luck tonight.